that I can find once in 1991. But what kind of history do you have with The Undertaker?
I've always gotten along great with Mark. I got all the respect in the world for Undertaker, Mark Callis. He's a great guy. He really is. And you know, for a big guy like that to go out for all the years that he did and work as hard as he did, because one thing about Mark Callis is he wasn't lazy. You know, it wasn't like he'd go out and say, hey, well, the house is half empty, let's take it easy. The Undertaker went out on a night-to-night basis and busted his ass, and which is, I think, a big part of the reason why he's held in the esteem that he's held today. It didn't matter if you walked into, say, the Pittsburgh Civic Arena and it was only half full. The Undertaker, you knew when he came out, was going to deliver the goods. And I think that's a huge, I don't think I know, that's a huge reason why the fans give him the respect they do today. And like you said, maybe he shouldn't be in there for 35-minute matches today. But the fans that are going, that are still going, the few percentages that are still going to the WWE shows, that takes them back to someplace previous. It takes them back to the good old days. When The Undertaker was on the card, you knew that he was going to deliver one hell of a performance. The fact that he's still trying to do it is kudos to Mark. My lambasting is to the company that they would have to resort to that. Is more, I think, a slap to the company and a reflection, I think, of what we just mentioned a second ago, the waning TV ratings, house show attendance numbers, network buy rate numbers. That's why they got to keep pulling people like The Undertaker back. But the fact that he can still go out there and do it for 35 minutes, you know, it's got to get respect. How else can you possibly look at that? Mark and I have always gotten along great and probably always will because of that.
The match you guys had that I could find was on August 1st, 1991. Undertaker defeats Shane Douglas at WWF Wrestling Challenge in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Do you remember that match at all?
Zero. I remember wrestling Mark Callis in WCW shortly before the time that I left, but I don't recall ever having wrestled him in WWF. My guess is in that time frame, because of where I was on the card in 1990, early 91, that, you know, it was probably a pretty strong, straightforward Undertaker match, but I don't have any recollection of
it. When you guys had that match in WCW, I know we talked about it before. Wasn't there an issue with the heart punch or something? Didn't you not want to take the heart punch, or what was the? I'm trying to remember what the story was behind that.
Well, there was. I had been off with knee surgery. I had blood clots on my knee that had to be removed, and I was off for 2 or 3 weeks. And while I was off, I was getting multiple phone calls from Jim Ross and other people in the office that were just slamming, like Sting and Lex Luger, the top guys, saying that they were all complainers and whiners, and you know, the WCW was not happy with continuing to pay them and push them because of the whining, complaining, and that they were going to break me and Johnny up. I was still with Johnny Ace at the time, and they were going to give me this huge singles push when I got back. The very first night I got back in Baton Rouge, Teddy Long, well, first of all, in catering, my first day back, I'm saying hello to everybody, and Missy Hyatt came and sat down, and she said, you know, they were talking awful about you in the production meeting. I've been gone for, at that point, about a month, I think it was. And at that time, I just thought, well, maybe Missy has it mixed up. And so I went looking, and Teddy Long, you know, came up to me, who at the time was just, you know, managing Mark. He wasn't anything in the office that I was aware of. And he started telling me, well, you know, you're only about 3.5 minutes, and Mark's going to beat with a heart punch. I had no problem putting Mark over. But with what I've been told for those 3-4 weeks that I was off, that didn't jive with what I've been told. And so there was, you know, a whole lot of drama and politics and everything else that went, you went into it. It was just typical WCW. The fact, to me, as I look back, the fact that WCW was able to stay in for the long haul, like they did, and that at one point they were able to, blow past Vince, what was it, 93 weeks or whatever, really is amazing when you consider there was that kind of politicking going on, at the backstages of WCW shows. It was routine that what was spoken about in the office, the production meetings in the office in Atlanta, then when it got out to the shows in the venues, whatever was talked about in the office suddenly became exactly the opposite. And, there was a lot of question as to whether or not the Jim Herds that were sitting in Atlanta, did they really know what was going on, or were they really paying attention to what was going on in the venues? And I think in hindsight, looking back, you clearly see that they didn't. They had no idea what was going on in the venues. And it was a lot about what had to do with the undermining of WCW the first time, when Vince took that commanding lead. And then later, it took Bischoff coming in with pretty much a blank checkbook to pull the Hulk Hogan, the Kevin Nash, the Scott Halls away to create that 93-week run. But, when you go back and you look at it just in the Monday Night War, it's just as what they are. Take a step back and WWE, WWF against WCW. The main difference and the sole difference that deserves attention is that Time Warner didn't give a shit about professional wrestling. It was just something they had under their umbrella with a myriad of other things. On the other hand, Vince McMahon ate, slept, and breathed WWF, WWE. So it's no big surprise to me, and I don't think anybody else that follows professional wrestling, that with that understanding, how Vince was able to ultimately defeat WCW. Truth be known, Time Warner didn't give a shit about professional wrestling. If anything, they had the elitist view, much like CNN today. They had the elitist view that, professional wrestling is beneath us. That's more redneck. That's podunk. We're above that. And meanwhile, Vince, not only came back and brought it back in his favor, but he kicked the shit out of them to the point where they had to finally tap and sell out for pennies on the dollar. Shame on Time Warner. They capitulated. They didn't lose. They capitulated.